Within the urbanist space, I think it's very fair to say a lot of time and discussion gets dedicated to cities and the unique challenges we face. It's kind of a feature in every video you see that we look at a stroad and imagine and how it could be transformed into a boulevard with parks and transit lanes and all that stuff. I think what gets less attention is how to transform smaller towns with less density and demand for it. Within that context, I want to have a look at my local town of Market Rasen and try to imagine how its traffic and parking situation can be improved within all the limitations and needs of its residents in mind. This is kind of an unscripted video on the topic, and it doesn't have any big revelation or idea at the end of it. Just consider this more of like a travelogue with a slightly urbanist bent to it, to a place that I don't think anyone else is going to make a dedicated video on. I hope you enjoy it. I think it's fair to start with a bit of a history lesson on the town. As the name Market Rasen implies, the town is a market town, mainly designed to serve as a congregation point for all of the rural farms and their produce in the area. Things really kicked off in 1848 when the Great Central Railway opened their branch from Barnaby to Lincoln, in the process opening a station within the town. And the town really expanded from there. Although the goods rail yards within the town no longer exist, you can still see a bit of railway architecture for buildings like stables, if you look closely enough. Market Rasen Station today sees about 200 passengers a day, which in a town with a population of about 4,000, I think is pretty good. In terms of road traffic, Market Rasen is located on a bit of a crossroads. On the north to south axis via the A46 is the roads from Grimsby to Lincoln, and then beyond to Newark, etc. From east to west, you have the A631 from Gainsborough to Louth. Both of these are very important roads in the region, and that does kind of create problems with traffic congestion through the town. A big problem with trying to solve congestion issues going through the town is just a matter of space and a lack of alternatives. This is what the main street through the town looks like. As you can kind of see, there isn't really any space to expand the pavement and make it a more pleasant place for pedestrians. There's definitely a lot of life on this high street, but unfortunately I think just the amount of traffic that can go through it, especially during rush hour when it's like the school rush, can be a bit overwhelming and obscure that aspect of the town. If you're curious about what would probably be the big nuclear option in terms of constructing a bypass around the town, this is also a place that's a bit hemmed in by geography. Pretty much the most logical route for bypass would require some kind of road improvement as it goes through a forest before taking a somewhat precarious route across farmland and waterways, as it's sandwiched in by both forests and a protected area of natural beauty. So a road bypass certainly isn't ideal, even if I think it would get a lot of east-west traffic out of the town. I think in quieter moments on the high street, you can definitely get a feel of that this town, especially in its centre, is actually overall quite pedestrian friendly. It's just impossible to build a big greenway through the town as you might expect in a big city, for example. I think overall that does mean that this town has some unique problems with pedestrianisation and urbanism that isn't found elsewhere, and I would personally love to hear what other people think. The other aspect of the town's urbanism that I want to discuss is the parking situation. Usually, the doctrine turns out to be that parking is a lot worse than building residential or commercial space. But in a rural town like this one, that dynamic is a bit different, because you do have lots of communities in very remote places that will drive into the town and which would be difficult to serve by frequent public transport. So a bit of parking is pretty much a necessity. It kind of reminds me of a United States Main Street South situation, where the town is designed to be driven into, but once you're there, you are encouraged to get out and walk around. The good news is that I do think Market Rasen has a very reasonable balance of parking, even if I don't think it's perfect. Within the town centre, I think there are 5 car parks that illustrate the difficulties of getting that parking versus useful space balance, and I'll go through each of them here. The first, accessed if you're coming in through the north of the town, is the Festival Hall. The Festival Hall is a joint community space and the town's administrative centre, and it's got a small parking area outside of it. I think this is actually quite a reasonable place and size to have parking here, and I don't have much of an issue with it. I think if Festival Hall gets a big refurbishment or rebuild in the future, then it may be worth reconsidering how to use this space. But as of right this very moment, I don't have a big problem with it. Marketplace is the town's big historic centre, and most of the time, part of it is dedicated to a kind of informal parking space. This is a place where I'm glad to say it has improved in recent years. A bit of the space has been cornered off for more permanent event space, and it is still pretty common for this area to be closed off for markets or special events, such as here, which was the Jubilee celebrations last year. I think the most likely idea I've heard around is that this would be a good space for a big outdoor dining and recreational area. Right next to the marketplace is the Aston Arms pub. I think turning this area in front of it into a permanent outdoor dining space that can also be shared with the many outdoor takeaways in the town might be a good use of it. In general, the lack of outdoor dining space in the town I think is actually a point that could be focused on. A bit over to the east, you have the Oxford Street Fishery, which is a great place, and I never really mentally acknowledged that they had a car park behind the building until I went to get photographs for this video. I think this area would be a great outdoor seating area and would certainly get a lot more use in that way than it currently is with a very oversized parking space. Next, a quick word on the car park outside the Lincolnshire Co-op. This isn't really commentary on this particular car park itself, but if making this video and working on the channel specifically has radicalised me on one topic at all, it's probably the uselessness of big box stores and the amount of space they need. Why is it that Tesco, which on this map I am not including its adjacent petrol station as part of its size, needs all this space to function, when the Lincolnshire Co-op can have a much smaller and more aesthetically pleasing building that better fits into its surroundings, with a reasonably sized car park in a much more convenient space, and it's 1/3 the size of the Tesco. I really think that like all supermarkets should just be built cut and cover and we build housing on top of it. I think that would vastly improve pretty much every single place where supermarkets exists currently. And the difference between Tesco and the Lincolnshire Co-op in this town is a good illustration of that. But next to the Lincolnshire Co-op is this parking area. To my knowledge, this area has always kind of been a bit empty. If you look at old maps of the town, here is that space in 1886 and here is that space again in 1947. It's now a car park, which I don't think is ideal, but I recognise that it is kind of a back area of the town, and that developing it would be an interesting challenge to pursue. I will mention that there are some small new developments right here, and I will say I actually really like these ones. They're of a solid density. Architecturally wise, they fit into the surroundings quite well without standing out. I think this is a good use of building new homes in a historic area of the town. I think the last car park to focus on is probably outside the library. I think out of any of these, this is probably the weakest place in the town and should probably be developed into something else, just because there's already plenty of parking nearby for both the library and the nearby Market Rasen surgery. And I've kind of felt that this space would be better served as like a recreational park or something like that. I don't know, tell me what you think. I think walking around the town for this little video and overview has really given me an appreciation for things that Market Rasen already does right and things that could be improved in the future. I'm hoping to put this video out to see if anyone has any ideas of what this town could become, acknowledging the limitations and the nature of its community. I really want to hear your comments, and thank you for watching what is quite a niche and meandering video.